So now that everybody has their food, we can start. Chazak, beautiful question. Okay, so we have, what a parasha. Mamash, maybe the highlight in some ways, in the storyline fashion of the entire Torah, this dramatic confrontation between Yehuda and Yosef. A confrontation that was building up already two parashiyot, from the time that we read Parashat Vayigash, where Yehuda is the one to advocate for the sale of Yosef. The endangerment, the spiritual endangerment of Yosef was wrought by the hands of Yehuda. And Yosef goes to Mitzrayim and somehow manages. I mean, Mitzrayim is, whatever impression you have of Vayigash, Mitzrayim was 10 times worse than it. It was the epitome of evil, of immorality, of arayot, everything you can, all the terrible things. That's what was happening. As a matter of fact, when the Torah wanted to describe what you shouldn't be, it said, "Uchmaaseh eretz Mitzrayim asher yeshavtem ba lo ta'asu." If you want to know how your morality should not look, don't do like Mitzrayim. Like, that's the example of what you shouldn't do. So Yosef is in this place, and he manages to not only survive, but retain his spirituality on such a high level, and is able to become physically excel and spiritually excel and protect himself and guard himself. When the brothers assumed, when they came to Mitzrayim and they said, well, we sold him to Mitzrayim, he's probably somewhere here. The first place they looked was in the places of harlotry, because they said there is nowhere else that someone with his beauty and his capabilities and his talents would end up in such a place away from the protection of Abba and his brothers. Where would such a slave end up? That's the natural reaction of how things would end up. And Yosef managed to not fall into that depression, that sadness, that maybe, that bitterness that he could have felt, very easily could have felt. Such a bitterness of what they did to me, they wronged me so much. And he didn't get caught up in that. He accepted it from Shamayim, and he was able to come back, and now we have this confrontation. Yes?
Didn't they sell them to the Ishmaelites?
Ishmaelim, but the Ishmaelim were planning to sell them to Mitzrayim, the Orichat Ishmaelim. They were traveling. So they were heading. They knew they were heading to Egypt. So the brothers were not fools. They knew where Yosef possibly could be. They figured by this point he's either dead or really in a bad state, which is worse than death. Better he be dead than be in such a state where he's committing sins left and right. So Yehuda has no idea, right? He's confronting Yosef. Now, one of the things the commentaries say is that when the goblet is found in the possession of Binyamin, Yehuda turns to Yosef, and there really are a few tactics that Yehuda does. It employs, he was very wise. On the one hand, he said, Bi Adoni yidaber navdecha davar. So you see that there was like sort of a soft speech and the respect that he showed to Yosef, but at the same time, he was sending him subliminal messages that, listen, I'm going to respect you, but if you respect me, and if you don't, and if you think you're going to take Binyamin, it's over. Not for you, for all of Mitzrayim. Yehuda already determined. I am not leaving this place without Binyamin, and if it means I have to kill all of Mitzrayim, then so be it. I'm willing to do that. And if it means that I won't be able to because Mitzrayim was not like, straws. There were fiddlesticks over here. It's a kingdom, right? So if I'm not successful, I'll go down trying. I don't mind. I'm ready to give up my life. When Yehuda says that, you have to realize Yehuda is stronger than Reuven, Shimon, and Levi, and everybody else. He is the strongest one of all of the Shvatim. So what Shimon and Levi were able to do in Shechem was nothing compared to what Yehuda is able to do. Even it says that he sent Naphtali, and he said, Naphtali, go scout the city. Naphtali zooms in, comes right back, and he tells Yehuda, there's 12 different provinces. He's like, great, we're 10. I'm going to take 3. Each one of you take 1, and we're wiping this place off the face of the earth. That's what Yehuda was ready to confront. Now, he left it in the hands of Yosef. He says, whatever you choose, that's what's going to be. But if you choose to hold on to Binyamin, then we're going to have a war over here. The confrontation, you could look up the Me'am Noez, how the confrontation developed, and like how Yehuda did one thing and Yosef responded with another thing. And then Shimon came into the picture, and reinforced, bolstered, and then Hushim ben Dan came in and started roaring with Yehuda. There's incredible stuff that's happening. The imagery that happens in this week's parasha is out of this world. But one of the things that Yehuda says is, Benimusim shelanu, there are rules in our Torah. This is what he's telling Yosef. There's rules in our Torah. If a person steals, im en lo v'nimkar bignevato. If he doesn't have money, then he's sold. And if he has money, he's not sold as a slave. So our halacha does not allow you to take Yosef as a slave. Why? Because Binyamin is not a poor man. And therefore you're not able to take him. The Magid Midubna says, I don't understand. What do you think you're talking to? You think you're talking to some religious Orthodox rabbi? You're talking to the king of Egypt. What are you telling him? In our laws, this is very nice. I appreciate your laws. Now put them aside. You're in the Supreme Court of the United States. Who cares about your laws? No. In my laws, in my house, this is how we do things. That's so nice. That's wonderful. I'll clap for your laws. But you're now in court and you have to follow our laws. So what's Yehuda trying to tell Yosef with this? It's a very bizarre thing to say. So this is one of the things we have to get ourselves into the mindset. A lot of times we're in this perspective, like the Torah, because it's the wisdom of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so we fall into this trap that we don't have to understand it. Or it doesn't always make sense. But there's sometimes that's true, it doesn't make sense to us, but another element, a very big subset of the Torah is Pikudei Hashem Yesharim Misamech Elev, that the Torah is beautiful, even to the average person who's looking. Meaning there's many levels. On the highest level, we don't understand anything about the Torah. But on a basic level, Pikudei Hashem Yesharim Misamech Elev, the Torah is a beautiful wisdom that everybody should be able to appreciate. So the difficulty is bringing out that wisdom because we're flawed. So it's hard for us to bring out the beauty and the wisdom of the Torah. This is why we need the Chachamim, this is why we need Rashi, we need the commentaries. But listen to what Yehuda is saying. Yehuda is saying, why would you in the world want Binyamin as a slave? In our Torah, meaning to say that our Torah has a very beautiful system. If a person steals and he doesn't have money, why did he steal? Because he doesn't have money. He wants to eat. He wants to be able to put food on his table. He has 5 children. I need to feed them. I don't have any money. What am I supposed to do? Starve to death? I can't starve to death. I know, I'm sorry, I'm doing the wrong thing. I'm stealing from somebody else. But my other option is death or starving. Okay, I can't do that. So the guy steals. Now, such a person who steals is still doing something asur. He's not allowed to steal. But at the end of the day, someone's willing to buy him. This is not a bad person. This is a person that if you provide him a home, you provide him the food that he needs, you provide him bread and water and sustain him, he's going to be a person that's an outstanding citizen. He's only stealing because he doesn't have what it takes. Lehavdil, the America, when Trump first ran the first time, they made laws, they made a whole new system where they freed a lot of criminals, and they developed a sort of a system where they said, okay, why are these people stealing? Not everybody, obviously. Or why are these people committing crimes? Because they have this and this problem. They were not making money. They didn't have an education. Okay, so we'll give them a trade. We'll give them a reason. We'll give them a purpose. And then they're going to come out and they're going to be outstanding citizens. That's the basic morality behind what they were doing. Whether it was right or wrong, or are people really able to assess who's going to be good or not? HaKadosh Baruch Hu could, but most people are not able to. Either way, if a person doesn't have money and he steals, it's pretty clear. He's stealing because he doesn't have what to eat. So therefore, if you could sell him as a slave, and the person will take him. Why wouldn't you take him? He could be a very good servant, and he's going to be an honest person. If you take care of him, he'll do fine. However, what if a person has money? He has everything he needs. His father sends him money every single month. His bank account is full. Everything's going great. He has everything that he wants, and he still steals. That kind of a person, that means to say he has terrible midot. His character is flawed. And it doesn't matter where you put him, he's going to steal. Because that's already part of him. So therefore, says the Torah, if he has money and he steals, what am I selling him as a slave? It's not going to do anything. He's still going to steal. So there's no purpose in selling him as a slave. And nobody's going to take him anyway. Who wants such a slave? You're going to want a person who steals when he has money, he's going to steal from you. I can't trust him. So what do I need him for? He's going to steal from me. I'm going to end up losing more than I'm gaining. So says Yehuda, B'nimusim shelanu, this is our system is a good system, is a logical, is Bigudei Hashem Yesharim, Mesamech Elev. What do you want this man for? What's this man going to do for you? He's a wealthy man. Binyamin was not a poor person. He had everything he needed. If he still stole from you, you want him as a slave? Come, take me instead. I'm willing to be your slave. It's a very powerful argument that Yehuda was advocating. And in passing, we learned something amazing for ourselves. That the lesson that we should take from it is that we have to search in every mitzvah in the Torah to see the beauty and to hear the music of what the Torah is commanding us. And that's our responsibility, which is essentially what the Sefer HaChinuch does. The whole idea of Sefer HaChinuch is to say, I know the commands are from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and it's beyond our understandings, and everything else is true, and no reason you give will 100% satisfy every detail of the halakha, but at the same time, I have an obligation, a responsibility to make it as sweet and as logical and as understanding and wise as possible in the way I'm able to understand it. And that is a level of Torah that is absolutely true and necessary, and Hashem wants us to do that, even though the Torah has many complicated levels that we're never going to be able to understand. So this is the sort of Perot HaNoshrim, what we're able to gain from that lesson that Yehuda went and taught us. Later on in the Parashat, I'm going to skip around in a random order. When Yaakov Avinu hears that Be'emet it's Yosef, and one of the first things he says, Rav od Yosef beni Hai, Elecha ve'erenu b'terem amut. Says Yaakov, I'm going to go to Egypt, and I'm going to see my son Yosef, who I haven't seen for 22 years. So sure enough, Yaakov Avinu takes his whole family, and this is where the counting comes in, Shivim nefesh yaradu avotenu mitzrayma, and he goes to Egypt. And the pasuk says, and this is a pasuk, and the lesson of the pasuk is very famous, but there's one detail that I think that is overlooked that is very important. It says, Vet Yehuda shalach lefanav Eli Yosef leorot lefanav Goshna. He sends Yehuda to Mitzrayim to go ahead, and Rashi says, why is he sending Yehuda to go ahead? Everybody knows. Yeshiva. To establish a makom of a yeshiva. So, I'll first start with the lesson that we know. It's a very powerful question. Who is he starting a yeshiva for? He's not starting it for the Egyptians. He's not doing it for Yosef. So who's he doing it for? He's doing it for Yaakov, for the tribes, and for their children and grandchildren. These are the greatest people. These are holy people. People that no amount of pressure gets to them. No amount, they're people that are very brave. They're people that are willing to stand up for their principles. They're willing to look at Shechem ben Hamor, who is a prince, and say to him, we're not going to marry into you unless you do Brit Milah. You imagine like the type of courage you have to say that to a king? No, we're not marrying into you until you do Brit Milah. And then to go ahead and to wipe out. These are people that are not so easily influenced by anybody. They're not wishy-washy people. They're very strong, and they have great leadership, and they have great scholars. They don't need a yeshiva. They could function without a yeshiva. And there's have to be, if you have to start a yeshiva, okay, it doesn't have to be the first thing you do. So the first powerful lesson that's learned is you see that it doesn't matter how great you are, there's no guarantee, and it has to be the first thing that you do. And Yaakov Avinu went ahead and said, no, this is the most important thing, and without this, we're not going to survive, we're not going to make it, we're not going to do it. If you think about it, go fast forward, HaKadosh Baruch Hu realized that he couldn't even take Am Yisrael out a day after he took him out. The 15th of Nisan was the last time they could have left Mitzrayim, because if they would have waited until the 16th of Nisan, they wouldn't have been able to leave. They would have reached Nun Sharei Tumah. So all of Yaakov Avinu's planning was not for nothing. If he wouldn't have done that, the influence would have gotten so bad that they would have been worse, and they wouldn't have been able to wait even until the 15th of Nisan. So it sounds like that Yaakov Avinu ended up being the difference between Am Yisrael leaving Mitzrayim versus not leaving Mitzrayim. So it comes out such a big deal that even great people are easily influenced by the people around them and can be affected. So if that's true for Yaakov and his children, it is most certainly true for us. But there's something here that I think gets overlooked. And this is something that Yaakov Avinu was worried about. You have a lot in the world, Nachshon ben Aminadavs. So there are people that say, and could say as follows. What do we need a yeshiva? Why do I need to go to a yeshiva? Hare, there was one person whose name was Yosef that went to Mitzrayim and managed to succeed without a yeshiva. And not only there was no yeshiva, there was no system at all. He was in the public school system. He was in the worst in the public school system. Every terrible thing you can imagine. The worst people around him, right? A woman trying to seduce him. And then Sarah Mashkim Sharovin, the biggest Baalei Ga'ava, the most arrogant people in Mitzrayim. And all the most terrible people are there. And Yosef is being showered with everything. And still, he didn't just manage to survive. He managed to become great. So he made it without a yeshiva. And not only he made it, he became the top of Mitzrayim. And all of his Kiddusha was not compromised in the least bit. He was just as holy, to the point that the brothers saw Yosef. They realized the holiness that this man had. They couldn't speak. They said, how did he become this holy? How did he become this holy? They couldn't believe it. So this is the level that Yosef managed to attain without anything. So it's very tempting for everybody else to come and say, well, Yosef did it. I could do it too. What do I need a yeshiva for? It's able to be done. And the answer to that, says Yaakov Avinu, that's my greatest fear. That everybody else thinks that they're going to now be able to do that in the same way that Yosef. And what they're not going to understand is Yosef was given unique powers and abilities. Hashem strengthened Yosef and gave him the koach to handle these challenges because he needed to pave the way. And if anybody else, as great as they might be and even greater than Yosef, tries to mimic and emulate the way that Yosef did it, they're going to fail. And they're going to bring themselves and the rest of Am Yisrael down with them. And this is a very scary thought, because we live in a world where sort of the image of some people, like if we go back to what things that happened a generation or two ago in American society, there were the way the Gdolim functioned, the way things were done on even basic levels and also on many levels. What was acceptable back then, you say to yourself, well, it worked for them, so it should work for us. But you're not. That's not a correct assessment. If it worked for an earlier generation because they needed to pave the way and make the way, that's a very different circumstance. And Yaakov Avinu realized that it's very tempting for people to say, "What do you mean? But I can manage without the yeshiva." I saw people that were able. This is why it's a joke when people say, "But the Rambam was able to succeed and do everything." And he went ahead and he didn't get parnasa from yeshivot. He had a business. So why are all the people learning in yeshiva? They should be like the Rambam. The answer is the Rambam had a very specific mission in the world and a purpose. He was the Yosef. He was the one that was supposed to break the ice and be that lead. That doesn't necessarily, the Yaakov Avinu was afraid other people are going to try to mimic the Rambam, and that would bring the downfall. And this is the idea. That's the yesod. It's very important for us to understand when we come to Avodat Hashem. And a lot of times, the Yetzer Hara convinces us to do things we otherwise wouldn't have done because of pretenses that are maybe legitimate. So I'll give you as one example. A lot of times people can say, look, I don't really want to expose my children to surroundings that aren't so spiritual and aren't so clean, but it's very necessary for them to have legitimate parnasa. And a lot of times we make compromises for the sake of making money and for the sake of building our portfolio and things like that are not really within the framework of Torah. Sometimes it could be, and sometimes it isn't. And there's a lot of that where sort of the first idea is I'm going to make money, and then I'll figure out if it works out with Avodat Hashem. Like jump into it. With Yaakov, you see the exact opposite. Here is something like Yaakov Avinu, the most natural thing is for him to go to Mitzrayim. His son, he hasn't seen him, his son's not able to come to him, he's going to go to him. Of course he's going to go. But even something so natural as the father's love of a son, he wasn't sure if Hashem wanted him to do it. Hashem had to come to him and say, don't worry about going to Mitzrayim, I want you to go. Because otherwise, Yaakov is like, who says I'm supposed to leave? Maybe I'm not supposed to leave. Maybe I'm supposed to be here. What do you mean be here? It's a famine. Yosef's going to take care of you. He's your son. It's the most natural thing in the world. No. maybe Hashem doesn't want me to go. Maybe He doesn't want me to expose my children in that type of a surrounding. But today we have this mentality, like I see it all the time, where sort of first I'll choose what I want, and then I'll figure out the rest of Avodat Hashem around it. The most common example is when it comes to like a person has a really crazy deal. There's a really cheap house that he could get with a lot of square footage. Now you could say square miles these days, right? Square miles, and it's going to be very cheap. So first he says, okay, first I'm going to go ahead and buy it. And then I'll figure out, is there a Beit HaKnesset? Is there a good yeshiva? What about the surrounding? Are they really? We'll figure it out. It's like, no, it's opposite. It's backwards. First you have to figure out the spirit. Et Yehuda shalach lefanav goshna. The number one thing is the spiritual. You have to focus on that. And then everything else will fit into place. I'll tell you a story. There's one of the great Talmidei Chachamim of Hungary in the last 200 years. He wrote a sefer called Matnat Hayim. Very powerful. It's in the Hasidim. And the story goes as follows. One time, he was giving a shiur, and he would have amazing shiurim. So like thousands of people would show up, a lot. And he would speak. So he brought with him a poor man that everybody knew was very poor, and he sat him next to him. The whole shiur, he sat him next to him. Now to sit next to the Rebbe is not a mabekach, right? That's obviously a very big kavod. So they were all wondering, everybody was wondering in the shiur, like, what did this fellow do to deserve such an honor to sit next to the Rebbe in the shiur? And most of the people, they didn't really think about it. They didn't say anything about it. But the few of the chashuvim that were very close with the Rebbe, they came up to the Rebbe afterwards and said, what did this man merit to be so close to you? So he says, I'll tell you a story. In the city where my parents lived, Budapest, they were raising me and my 3 brothers. And there was a very famous doctor. He said the name of the doctor, Dr. So-and-so, who everybody would go to. He was very successful, very good, talented. One time the doctor came to my parents and he said, I see that you're raising your children to learn Torah. They're always learning, but what's going to be with Parnasah? How are they going to earn a living? I'm worried for your children, how they're going to be making money under the current conditions. They're not going to be educated to be able to make money, and then they're going to be on the streets. So out of concern, he comes to the parents and he tells them. They said to him, we have 2 pesukim in the Kiryat Shema. Ukshatam leot and vishinantam levanecha. Both of those pesukim are juxtaposed. They're right next to each other. Just like nobody says on ukshatam leot, where you put on tefillin, nobody says, ma yetzeli mizeh. What am I going to get from this mitzvah? A person puts on tefillin, doesn't ask questions. What do I gain from the mitzvah of putting on tefillin? What's going to... you put it on, it's a mitzvah, it's in Shamayim, you get credit, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is happy, you're happy, everybody's happy, that's it. You don't think twice. They said to him, just like ukshatam is a mitzvah, you don't ask about what the results are going to end up with. Vishinantam levanecha is the same type of mitzvah. Teaching your children Torah, you don't question, ma yetzeh mehem, what's going to be from them, from those children. That's what my parents told him, and they continued raising us. The 4 boys all became major Talmidei Chachamim. He says, Rabbi, that's really nice. It's a beautiful story, but what does it have to do with the question we asked you with this person sitting next to you? How's that connected? He said, this person sitting next to me, this poor man, was the son of that doctor. He's the son of that doctor. That doctor was very rich, very successful. Mishum ma, I didn't get clarity in the story why it didn't manage to transfer, but you don't really need the clarity. It's like HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't want it to happen, it doesn't happen. So he was so worried, the doctor was so worried and so concerned. What's going to be with the children? What's going to be with the Matnat Hayim? In the meantime, the Matnat Hayim became a Dayan, Shofet, Rav Keila. He had everything. And the poor man sitting next to him is the one that was the son of the doctor. To show you, and Reb Zilverstein would say over the story, and he would say, this story was a story of Kiddush Hashem. To show you the people that go in the ways of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Na ra'iti v'gam zakanti ve'lo ra'iti tzaddik ne'ezav ve'zaro mevakesh lachem. I was young and I was old and I did not see a tzaddik that HaKadosh Baruch Hu left him, that the children have to go ahead begging for bread. Meaning HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes care of those that do the people that go in the ways of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the people that don't have those questions, you don't need to ask questions. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one that's mifanes. He is the one. Yes, some people, that's what Rav Vaji discusses, what type of a person should be learning all day and what type of person should go to work. We gave a shiur about this once, of Torah im derech eretz, and what's the correct approach. Ayen sham, what you should do is obviously should be done with direct guidance, but the idea that a person has to be worried when he goes into Krei Kodesh and when his children go to yeshivot and they become Talmidei Chachamim and he tries to take him out of that, what's going to be on the way? Why take him out? What do you mean? They're going in the right way. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to take care of them. Adarabah, when a person starts trying to break that and say, no, what's going to be with Parnasah and figure out ways, then that's when the bracha is actually stopped and it could be precluded. So he would say over the story, and it turned out, a turn of events, the Matnat Hayim is the one that was raising funds to make sure that this person would be able to have the Parnasah. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs his world in the way that he wants to run his world. And nothing is going to change that. If he wants a tzaddik to be poor, it's because he wants him to be poor. It wouldn't help him to go ahead and get 5 degrees, because with the 5 degrees, he could also be poor. And if he wants a person that worked hard to be, worked very little to be rich, he will be rich. The idea is for us, though, is to not run after the wealth. A lot of times, you see this in the younger generation today, like the I would say late teenagers, early 20s, you see that there's this very crooked mentality of it doesn't matter what the job is, if it makes a lot of money, then it's kasher. It's good. It could be done. And you could be wearing a kippah and tzitzit and coming to Beit HaKnesset, and like it's considered a respectable parnasah, even if it might not be necessarily terribly ethical, proper. There was never a step of like even making a determination. That's like the saddest part. It's like, of course, a job makes money, that's given. Now let's figure out ways to make everything else fit into that picture. And that's not the Ratzon Hashem. That's not how Kadosh Baruch Hu wants us to think. It's certainly not how Yaakov Avinu taught us to think. And that's not what Hashem wants us to do. So we have to retrain the way, as I mentioned this in the past, when it comes to Ilchot Shabbat, when it comes to Ilchot Kashrut, the average question I get, maybe most of the time I would say, is the answer is it's mutar. More often than not, people are more strict, or the lack of knowledge is in the direction of being more strict than what halakha actually requires. When it comes to, unfortunately, when it comes to things of parnasah, things that involve, there's a few topics, like matters of tzniut and matters of parnasah, and matters that are connected to that area. All of a sudden, the sort of starting point is so far off that almost many of the times, I shouldn't say almost, but some of the times the answer is you're allowed to do something, but a lot of the times the answer is you're not allowed to do it. Why? Because like we're sort of starting from a very different perspective of everything is okay until proven otherwise. And like we're not really asking ourselves if everything that we're doing, and if something's not okay, so then stop. Like if it's not okay, what are you doing? You're saying, I'm the one that's bringing parnasah. Kadosh Baruch Hu brings us parnasah. We're not bringing parnasah. So to be able to stop ourselves and to realize parnasah comes from Hashem, and He has 100 ways to do it, and He could do it in a legitimate way, and He doesn't need us to cut corners in order to provide the parnasah is very important. And whether it comes to the jobs that we have, or where we decide we're going to live or not live, all these decisions have to be made. It's like Yaakov Avinu made it. He decided based on Ratzon Hashem. I want to see my son. I want to be taken care of. It's a famine. In general, you're supposed to do ishtadlut. In a time of a famine, this is one of the things they learn from this week's parasha. The importance of taking care of yourself is learned from this week's parasha. Why? Because it says that Yaakov Avinu didn't want to send Binyamin. Say, Yaakov Avinu, where's your emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu? What do you mean? If he's going to put himself, if Hashem wants him to be in harm's way, so you could keep him at home and he'll be in harm's way. And if he's not going to be in harm's way, so then send him. What's the difference? The answer is, you see from the Torah's perspective, there is such a thing as putting yourself in harm's way. And Yaakov Avinu said, if I send Binyamin, he's going to be in a place of danger. Once a person is in a situation that is perceived as dangerous, you know what happens in Shamayim. They start looking, they open the books. Okay, he's in a place of danger. You know, is it worth keeping him alive? Is it worth protecting him? he has a nice mitzvah over here. Okay, we'll take this mitzvah and we'll protect him. And then either a nes has to happen to him, or menakim lo mizichuyotav. He loses his merits because he put himself in danger. So Yaakov Avinu realized there is such a concept that you don't put yourself out in a place of danger. And you have to remove yourself and you have to do ishtadlut to not be in a place of danger. That is for sure a Torah concept. But at the end of the day, Yaakov Avinu, when it came to make a decision where he's going to live, that decision has to be done with a spiritual focus. One of the things that Yosef tells his brothers, the very beginning, Stam, they ask, there's a machloket in the Midrashim. This is why it's hard to say over the story of Yosef and Yehuda, because you have such a big difference between the two opinions. There's one opinion, which is the accepted, sort of the more accepted opinion in people's minds at least, is that the brothers had no idea that it's Yosef. But I did see the Midrashim, there are Midrashim that seem to say that Yehuda understood. The man in front of him is Yosef. It's only a question of convincing Yosef to let go of the maybe perceived grudge and the whole show that he was putting on. And that was the difficulty. So why would you say that? Because it really explains why Yehuda is doing what he's doing. If you think about it, he's sort of just repeating the whole story over. Right? He comes to Yosef. Yosef says, Binyamin is going to stay with me. You're going to all go back. And what does Yehuda do? He reviews, like Chazarat HaShiur. No, but there was a father. You came to us and you asked us and we told you and you said and we went back and we brought you the money. Yosef knows the whole story. What's he really trying to do over here? So he is assessing Yosef. I know Yosef. I know that your whole plan and everything you're trying to do is to bring Yaakov Avinu down to Mitzrayim. But let me tell you, well, there's different ways of saying this. One understanding is that Yosef wasn't sure if the brothers were telling him the truth. And maybe they were lying to him, just like they lied a little bit about Ve'achiv mit when they said that. So they wasn't sure if when they said, and he kept on repeating this question, is my father still alive? Is my father still alive? They kept saying yes, yes, yes. He wasn't sure if that was really legitimate. Now, he would have asked them to bring him down, except he was an older man, and they couldn't bring him down. So the best option would be to bring Binyamin to verify what they were saying. So that's a lot of the stories. And now Yehuda explains again, he says, if we're not telling you the truth, why would we have brought Binyamin? Why would we have done what we did? Why would we give you back your gold and your silver and everything else? So the Yehuda is trying to talk to the point of, we're not lying to you. He is actually alive. And if you want, we could bring him to you, but don't go ahead and create this whole cover. Just reveal yourself and let it happen. So Yehuda, indeed, the Midrash holds that Yosef was going to continue. If it wasn't for Yehuda's convincing, Yosef would have gone with that full steam ahead, and he would have given problem after problem after problem to the brothers, until one way or another, he would have weaved a plan to get Yaakov Avinu to come down. Because that was what the purpose of it was. The Ramban even asked a question. He says, I don't understand. Why isn't Yosef sending letters to his father? He is alive and well. He's no longer a slave. His father is worried. He's concerned. Why didn't you send him a message? So the Ramban learns the pshat was Yosef did everything to fulfill the dream. And he had this prophecy. Essentially, it's a prophecy that he has to be the one to fulfill the dream. Now, if Yaakov knows that it's Yosef, what are the chances he's going to bow down to his own son? Right? So he has to come, he's trying to devise a plan to get everybody down, not knowing that it's him, and making this whole complicated plan. Now, if he tells Yaakov that I'm alive and everything is well, then that's going to ruin everything. So the Ramban says he didn't want to do that because it wouldn't have helped to fulfill his dream. It would have taken him a step back, and he saw that as a mission and a purpose that he had to do. Yes?
But Yaakov never bowed down to Yosef, right?
No, it sounds like he did.
Why? It says
yeah, it says.
But no, sorry. I thought he came, he was saying Shema, and then, but it doesn't say like the maid servant.
Let me see it again, 1 second.
No, the reason that Yaakov came to Mitzrayim because they told him Yosef is alive. Isn't it?
Yeah, that's how it ended up.
So what kind of purpose of Yosef?
That's because of Yehuda. No, but that was Yehuda's convincing. The opposite. If it wasn't for that, Yosef would have done. If it wasn't for Yehuda's convincing, Yosef would have taken Binyamin, and guess what the next step would have been? Yaakov Avinu should come down to get Binyamin. Right. That was the plan. Which is why Yehuda tells them, you can't do this. Because meaning Yosef was saying to Yehuda, no, you go back to your father. Your father's an intelligent man. He's going to understand. Binyamin was taken because he stole. That's a very logical thing. A guy steals. He committed a crime in a different place. He's going to be put in jail. Of course. Your father's going to understand. So what does it say that Yehuda responded to Yosef? He said something beautiful. He said, Vera'a ki en anar imanu. No. Before explanations, he's going to see, where's Binyamin? I don't see Binyamin. He's going to die. Before I even have a chance to explain, he's nafsho kishura ben nafsho. So you want me to go back and tell my father and you're going to devise, it's not going to work. Because he's going to die the second he doesn't see Binyamin. Nothing's going to help. And then that's what convinced Yosef, because the whole purpose is, obviously he doesn't want his father. What really got to Yosef, what hit the nerve, was that v'nafsho kishura b'nafsho, that if you take Binyamin, it's over for Yaakov Avinu, and then how are you going to fulfill your whole plan? How is your plan going to be fulfilled like that? So Yehuda was brilliant. Sometimes a wise person could save a lot of trouble. The wisdom of Yehuda confronting Yosef and talking him in a language that he would understand and arguing the points that he cared about is what got Yosef to finally have to buckle. Otherwise, he would have just continued.
But the second prophecy then never came true, right?
That's what I'm looking up. 1 second.
I'm also confused about one thing. Why does he need to make the dream come true? Prophecy is given to you to tell you what's going to happen, not for you to make it come true.
No, so prophecy is not given to you to just tell you the future. Prophecy is it becomes your purpose to fulfill. This is one of the things about Shaul HaMelech that I think people fail to realize. Because people have a very difficult time with Shaul. They say, what's going on with you, Shaul? You keep chasing David. He's not a bad person. He's your son-in-law. Like, what's wrong with you? And Shaul was a great tzaddik. He wasn't like the kings after him that were evil people. Shaul was legitimately one of the, if not the greatest king of Am Yisrael, certainly up there on the top 3. The Rabbi Yonatan Eifshitz says he was the greatest king of Am Yisrael. There wasn't hands down the greatest king of Am Yisrael. And that includes even David HaMelech. So some of the commentators he was even greater than David. So if you say that, like, how do you understand it? The answer is because he was given a prophecy. What was the prophecy? Shmuel comes to Shaul and says, Hashem chose you to be the king. The minute that there's a prophecy of you being king, it's not just, oh great, I won the lottery. It's your task. It's a responsibility. It's not a gift, like I say all the time. In Shamayim, they don't give gifts, they give responsibilities. You have a responsibility to preserve the kingship. It becomes your life mission. And since David HaMelech was a threat to the kingship of Shaul, it became his responsibility via prophecy that he has to kill David, which is why he was never punished for chasing David. He wasn't, because that's true. That's the mission I gave you. Because you have to preserve your kingship. It's built into you becoming king and being anointed by Hashem to be king is preserve it. And don't let someone come take it from you. You can't. It was given to you by Hashem. You have to preserve it. Which is part of back to our generation. This was the whole argument of the Bavitcher Rebbe. And why he was saying that we cannot give any part of Eretz Yisrael over to the Arabs. Even for the sake of peace. If you're given a gift, it's not a gift from the UN. It's not a gift from the League of Nations. It's a gift from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What right do you have to take the gift, and in this case, a prophecy of Am Yisrael receiving Eretz Yisrael and then Psukim Meforashim, and to just hand it to somebody? It's not yours. It was given to you by Malko Shel Olam for you to hand over to somebody else. So that's the same idea. It's the same yesod. So with Yosef, if he was given the dream and not anybody else, the pshat is your job becomes to carry that out. Now, not everybody agrees with that. Meaning the Ramban learns this way. Not everybody agrees. They say it's a dream, it's not a prophecy, and there was no explicit command. You could argue on the Ramban, and you could take a different position. Many Rishonim do, but that's the Ramban's version of why Yosef did what he did, which actually makes a lot of sense, because you say, like, why is he doing such crazy things to his brother? All of a sudden it starts to make sense. He's not doing it because he hates them. He's doing it because that's his job that Hashem wants him to do. And the way it's understood. Now, I will make one note that once the Torah is given, you cannot do what Yosef did. You can't come along and say, I had this dream, and therefore I'm going to cause my brother suffering, I'm going to cause them pain, I'm going to blame them for all of those are isurim for us to do. It's only because it was before the Torah was given, and therefore he was allowed to interpret the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Otherwise, you can't break halachot. Even if a prophet comes to you and says, break this halacha, in some cases you'd be able to say, there are some unique cases. But in general, if a prophet comes to you and he says, break this halacha in the Torah, you take the prophet and you execute him. Because he's a false prophet. There's a Torah, it explicitly says. So we're not necessarily able to do that once the Torah is given. But before the Torah was given, that was a very legitimate way of doing things. Shaul HaMelech had, as a king, he has the authority. He doesn't have a prohibition of killing somebody who's a traitor. He's following halacha. Mored b'malchut is one of the jurisdictions of the king to kill those people. If he would have killed him stam, you're right, he would have been violating lo tirtzach. But if he's killing him because he's mored b'malchut, that's literally his chiyuv, his responsibility as the king. Okay, so what do we get up to? How are we? Oh, it's okay. Time flies. Baruch Adonai le'olam. Amen ve'amen.